Hello everyone, Daniel Yuck here. Thank you all for tuning in today. I appreciate you. Today I'm going to be bringing you episode 10 of our tattoo critiquing series here on my YouTube channel, where you as a viewer get to submit the tattoos that you've done on your end to me for a critique here on this channel. I will go ahead and leave an email below so you can go ahead and email in your critiques. You can email fake skin and or human skin to me. I'm going to go ahead and critique both should you want that to be done. If you have any questions about anything that you see throughout this video, I'm going to encourage you to drop a comment down below. I will do my best to assist you in the best possible direction. With that being said, let's dive straight on into this. So beginning with the first submission here for the tattoo critiquing episode number 10 is going to be Delair Patrick. Allow me to zoom in and I'm going to try to match the tone here as best I can, as well as the line weights here. So that's about right. So taking a look at this tattoo right here, there's a couple of things that do stand out that I would recommend working on. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of make my way throughout this tattoo here. So one thing that I am noticing is a little bit of inconsistency with the lines here, as well as from A to B. Right here, the depth was a little bit lighter versus the depth right here, which created this lighter, almost blank area right here, which makes it look like the lines aren't connected. So one thing that I would recommend is learning the A to B and being confident when you're pulling the lines. But not only that, one thing that I would do first before that is right here you can see some wobbles, and as I look throughout the work there's a little bit right here as well. So what I would recommend doing is finding a flow that you're comfortable with, as well as getting really in tune with the gear that you're using on your end. Doing this, becoming acquainted and getting used to the gear that you're using and finding a good workflow will allow you to be more comfortable when tattooing. So when you're more comfortable, your work will actually reflect that as well, and it'll look more cleaner. For the shading aspect, I wouldn't get into shading right now. I would go ahead and focus on the lining aspect. So as you can see right here, what I would do is I would go over this with a thicker line weight to kind of hide the wobbles that were there. And then what I would do is just simply go over what's there, but while remembering that A to B. So I'm going to be confident in my pulls. I'm going to be nice, steady, and consistent as I possibly can be. And this line, and granted, I am aware that this is just on the iPad. However, I do think that the same rule of thumb will still apply. So on this aspect right here, you can bring it out this way. Actually, let me do it again. And the leaves, you always want to end them with the points tapering out. Never start from the tip that way. So that's one thing that does stand out off the top right here. And for me, I would have kind of just put the line all the way through. Even if the design had a skip there, I would have personally done it all the way through. And then I would have added more details to my liking, I guess tailored to my style and what I like to see within tattoos. So just like that. So that's how I would go about that aspect. And then right here as well, going back to that comfortability from A to B, so you can kind of clean that up. But when we start taking our time and really focusing on the bare bone essentials, in this case would be lining, even that alone can make all of the difference within a tattoo. So as you see right here, and again, granted, I am using a bigger line weight. So you can see just this small area that we're patching up looks a lot and reads a lot cleaner. And you can see right here in this area how the line kind of doubled up right here. So we may have maybe started, picked up, and went off, or something to this extent. I cannot be too sure. However, going over with a bigger line weight will definitely make it more consistent and cohesive here. As you see right there, kind of hides that flaw right there. And for me, I like to just typically bring my middle here of the leaf all the way up right here. And then adding the details as we see fit. That's completely subjective, to each their own. So you can see though, even just these minor changes using a bigger line weight and taking my time with the application, taking my time with pulling the lines and where I want them and how I want them to look, my positioning. All of this plays a important role on the overall readability of your tattoos. If we're not taking the time to necessarily do these things, then it's gonna read, we're gonna get shaky, inconsistent, choppy results. So I would recommend working on taking our time and getting into a better headspace when we tattoo, so that way you don't feel the need to rush here. And then once we can go ahead and do that, go ahead and focus on lining. And then again, right here, as you see, these lines don't necessarily connect. So once we start doing this throughout the entire tattoo, it's going to start showing, and the readability and quality of the tattoo is going to begin to decline, which is why details and paying attention, or paying special attention to details, is super important. So what I would do is get a thicker line weight, and just the same thing back to the basics, repeating this process of lining to the best of my ability with a thicker line weight. And as you see, it's going to clean it up. It cleans it up tremendously. And right here as well, as you can see, this area right here was rather inconsistent, so we may have just kind of went fast and overthrew it rather than keeping the same steady, consistent speed and depth throughout the entire pool. So you can see certain areas are already starting to take shape just off of these little changes that we are making here. So for Delair, that's what I would recommend doing. I would recommend taking it back to the basics. Don't worry about shading right now. Shading will come much more easier once the fundamentals and basics have been established. So for this, I would recommend to you, work on line work, work on positioning and comfortability, and work on finding A to B. Pay attention to those details, pay attention to where you start and finish, and then also pay attention to your needle depth and consistency along the way. That's what I would highly recommend doing on your end. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them down below. I appreciate your submission. Let's go ahead and move on to the next one. So the next one here on the list is going to be Timberlark. And if I pronounce any of these names incorrect, please forgive me. It's not my intention. I'm doing the best of my ability here. So this is going to be Timberlark here. And for Timberlark, I'm looking at them and they're not half bad. I do see a little bit of inconsistencies with some lines here. However, happens to the best of us. So for me though, this is more so traditional style, I would say, in my opinion as well. We have kind of more simplistic designs with a little bit heavier line weight. So if I look right here, it kind of looks, this area is just a tad bit lighter. So that may have been a little bit of inconsistency, maybe in terms of needle depth and or speed and voltage. But what I would do is I would recommend trying, again, as I stated with the other submission, getting comfortable with positioning, and when you're doing that, paying special care, or special attention rather, to the feel of the machine. So pay special attention to your consistency with your needle depth there. That's what I would say, because it looks as though you're fairly decent with shading. I'm going to go ahead and touch base on the shading here shortly, but for the lines here, I would just recommend finding a comfortable position, getting comfortable, and committing to your lines. As it does seem as though you can pull straight lines, so that's what I would recommend. If I was in this area right here doing these sort of tattoos, that's where I would essentially begin. Like right here as well, you can see the lines are just a tad bit lighter, so on human skin that would actually reflect as well. So touching these up and making sure we're at the same consistent depth would make for a better read, and all of the difference, in my professional opinion. And maybe even a thicker line weight. For me, I would probably use a heavier round shader, a thicker round shader for this style of tattoo right here specific, just to kind of give it that traditional vibe, that traditional approach there. I do like the little shading detail right there. That's actually really cool. Nice work on that. Nice technical abilities there. And right here, I would like to taper these lines up and out, having them come into a taper right there. That's just personal preference. So as you can see, this area right here, cleaning that up with a bit thicker of a line weight does make for a better read. And again, that's just in my opinion. That's 110% subjective, as all of the critiques are. So off the bat though, that's one thing that I would recommend, is trying to be a little bit more consistent in terms of needle depth when you're pulling lines. As you see right here, for me, when stuff like this happens to me, it's probably because I was uncomfortable and I was trying to go for an angle and or too long of a pull that I wasn't ready for and or capable of doing, or just not comfortable. So that's why I keep referring to that comfortability from A to B. That comfortability matters. It really does. So for me, what I would have done is take my time and do these as best I can. Also, a tip that I may want to or a tip that I can give you rather, is if you get a journal and simply do lines back and forth to kind of find a flow on pulling steady, consistent lines. I actually have a video on that as well, showing you how I go about doing that exercise, which really impacted the results that I achieve when tattooing. So I would recommend, or even just getting a fake skin and pulling lines as straight as you can, like so. That's actually a really good way to approach it as well. And the reason why I say that is it'll help you establish a good sense of speed and voltage, and as well as depth, as these elements should be working in unison when we're tattooing. So from me to you, I would recommend trying out different line weights and then trying to work on your comfortability from A to B, so that way you can keep a more stable, consistent needle depth and a good, healthy hand speed to voltage ratio. Now, if I didn't touch base on anything specific, or if you have any questions at all, please let me know in the comments below and I will do my best to assist you. Now, one thing else that I want to touch base on is the shading. It's actually not half bad. I would just recommend trying different tones, mess with different gray washes to see what you like best. See if you like lighter tones, if you like darker tones, or a combination of both. Another thing that I would also recommend. Truly appreciate your submission, Timberlark. Thank you very much. And the next submission is going to be from an individual named Zillacyst. I know that pronunciation is incorrect. Forgive me for that. So off the bat, this actually looks really, really cool. I like what you did with the mags here. I actually approached some leaves like this as well, and I love the way that this looks right here. This actually looks pretty dang good in my opinion. Now, if I had to give any feedback here, I would recommend trying to mess with different hand speeds and voltages. This right here tends to happen to me sometimes here, and when this happens, it's probably because my needle depth is a little off, or my voltage is too slow, or something to this extent. However, these lines are nice and clean, but for me, I would just recommend trying different voltages, different hand speeds, as well as different needle depths to achieve a nice, clean, smooth, solid, saturated line. However, and this is a big however, depending on the skin that you're using would determine how this actually looks, because you can still pull the line exactly the way that we need to. Depending on the skin material, it can still behave this way. So if it is a rubber type of skin, forgive me for that, or if it is the Amazon skins, like a Yolong Amazon skin, then we're gonna get these results. If that's the case, the line work is still really, really clean, and I love what you're doing here. If I had to say anything about this, I would recommend messing with different tones of shading as well, trying to find out what you like from shading and what you don't, messing with different areas to put the shading in, and maybe even different techniques. But for this though, this is actually really, really clean, and I don't really have necessarily much to say about it. But right here in this area, as you can see, this line kind of looks like incomplete. So we have this area right here, which is a part of the line, and to me it looks like this line does this right here. It goes into that line like so, if that makes sense. So for this right here to resolve this sort of issue, what I would recommend doing is when you're coming in this way, taper it into the line like so. Don't be afraid to get into that line, so that way you can taper it in to avoid these little hiccups, because once these start happening throughout the entire tattoo, it's going to decline the quality and readability of the tattoo. So that's pretty much what I would say, is be mindful of the A to B's and try to focus and work on tapering them in and out into the lines of each other, so that way you can't tell where the start and end points are. If you have any questions at all, please feel free to drop them in the comment section down below. Keep up the great work, and I genuinely appreciate your submission as well. The next one is going to be from Jamal Miller, and Jamal Miller, looks as though you're doing pretty well. It looks as though you have some details here and some nice shading going on as well. Allow me to match the line weight here. One thing that I am a big fan of is the shading you have. As you can see right here within these leaves, this is actually really beautiful shading. I love what you're doing with this. You have different tones. It looks as though you have depth and dimension there. Outstanding. I also love the way that this tortoise or turtle looks as well here. The detail and dimension here is amazing. keep up the great work. This is actually outstanding. I don't have much to say, but rather more so tips. So if I had to give any tips, and I hope I'm not giving any unsolicited advice, however, any tips that I would give, it would be to mess with different gray washes just to see what type of tones you get, because you may come across something that you really like that you wouldn't have without messing with gray washes. Another thing that I would personally recommend trying, that I would do, that comes to mind, is have a bolder line around them. I wonder how they would look if the line came out thicker. So like if we kind of went like this with a thicker outline, I think that that would look really cool. I've seen some styles of tattooing where they have thicker outlines and it looks great. That's another thing that I would recommend trying. And again, this isn't something that I'm saying to do. It's more so something to experiment with, to see where it takes you. As you see, so that's what I would do, is kind of put a bolder line around the entire tattoo to kind of create more more interest within the tattoo. Overall though, these are outstanding tattoos. Keep up the great work, and everyone else who's submitting, keep up the great work. Don't get discouraged. Tattooing can be quite difficult at times. So as you see right here, I would do something like that. I actually love the way that that looks. That reads well. If there was a thicker outline, it may look well on skin. So that's something that I would recommend trying, different gray washes as well as different techniques such as bolder lines around the actual tattoo. But all in all, fantastic work. This actually looks really great. I'm excited to see your future work and where you're going with this. Keep up the outstanding work, and as well as everyone who submitted, thank you for submitting. Thank you for submitting as well, Jamal Miller. And the last one here is going to be on fake skin. And I'm sorry, real skin. This is going to be on human skin. The others were on fake skin. Again, if you have a submission, you can go ahead and submit. If it's on human skin, I'll still review it. If it's on fake skin, we can go ahead and still review it. So right here, one thing off the bat that I'm noticing that's obvious is when this tattoo heals, a lot of this is going to be missing. It's not, I don't feel this is going to hold up over the test of time, and allow me to explain why. So off the bat right here, we can see that this is going to be the wrist area, if I'm correct, or something to this extent. It could be an ankle, it could be a wrist, but it's going to be an area where there's a lot of creasing going on. And the reason why I'm saying that is because you can see that right here. So the skin right here in this area right here is going to be naturally looser, which is going to require a tighter pull and stretching of the skin when inputting ink in this specific area. If I zoom in up close, now it's like a little illusion going on. You can see far away, it looks as though this is going to be a full line right here, but when you zoom in, it's in fact not. So what this is right here we hit the dermis, right here we hit the dermis, and all of this is the epidermis. There's a little piece in the dermis right there. Same thing for this. We hit the dermis right here, and then we fell out, hit the epi, and then we hit the dermis right here. So you can see off the bat right here, these are inconsistencies, and when it heals and when it starts peeling and all of that, this is going to be lost, and especially over time here. For this specific area right here, and for this style of tattoo, as you can see over here, the ink completely just hit the epidermis, didn't get to where we needed it to. For this is going to be a matter of comfortability and technical application. What I'm saying is, when we're tattooing the client, I would have held the client from the bottom, and I would have pulled their skin down, stretching the skin that way. So that way I get a tight pull around here, and I would just simply stuck to this stencil here. I would personally use maybe a 003 round liner for this entire tattoo, just so that way I can be super precise with where I am placing the pigment. But I feel when we did this tattoo right here, whoever had did this tattoo, they didn't put enough stretch on the skin, therefore resulting in them not able to get the ink deep enough, adequately enough to where it needs to get. So for me, what I think happened was they probably were stretching very minimal, and when they were doing it, they're probably using a bigger needle weight than what was best for this specific tattoo and the size of this tattoo, and maybe the technical expertise just wasn't there. Because as I'm seeing right here, if we zoom in right here as well, this is going to hit the epidermis. All of this is out of proportion and it's in the wrong layer. This right here is in the right layer, but then as you see though, it's not a consistent line. It has like patchiness. So the lines like this, they look like this to me. Right here, right here. So this is one of the lines, and I'm just following the rim. So that's the line right there. So for me, what that tells me is when we were pulling the line, we were probably inconsistent with the depth. So when we went in, we probably pulled out a little bit, not knowing as we were gliding the needle across the skin, and it creates these sort of inconsistent results. So what I would recommend doing is, if you have access to fake skin, I would recommend working on fake skin and getting comfortable with a steady, consistent ratio between hand speed and voltage, as well as your needle depth. And on top of that, I would also recommend stretching of the skin, especially in this sort of area where we have a bunch of natural creases and textures like this going on. Whenever there's this there, you want to make sure that you're opening that skin and you're stretching it, so that way the ink is deposited exactly where it needs to be. Real quick here before we conclude this video, as you see, this M right here, we were a lot darker in this area versus this area right here. So zooming in, we can see the inconsistencies, and again, you can see the textures and layers, bumps of the skin, all of the crevices here. So when we're doing that, you want to try and make the skin as flat as possible, and we do that by stretching the skin. Now, I hope that I can help you in a better direction here. Just to recap, what I would recommend working on is a good comfortable ratio with hand speed and voltage and needle depth. I would recommend going to the chop block, getting good on fake skin, and making sure that you can pull nice, clean, consistent lines on fake skin, and then proceeding to tattoo human skin. Also, I would recommend practicing practicing with smaller configurations, so that way you can deposit ink exactly where you need to. And over here as well, the line work is a bit inconsistent, which is why I'm recommending going back to fake skin to go ahead and practice line work on there as well. That's what I would have to say for this. Keep up the work. I appreciate you all tuning in. That's how I feel, and that's pretty much what I would say for this tattoo. I truly appreciate your submission. Thank you very much, Raja Kopal. And if I'm mispronouncing that, please forgive me. I do genuinely apologize, but I truly appreciate your submission. And everyone else who submitted, I truly appreciate you all. Thank you very much. Now, if I didn't touch base on something specific, or if one of you have any questions about anything that you saw throughout this video, I'm going to encourage you to drop a comment below. I will do my best to assist you in the best possible direction. I also have social medias all under the same name as this YouTube channel. I have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I would truly appreciate the support on there. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for me and ring that bell, as I'm going to be bringing more videos like this for you all. Thank you for tuning in yet again. You have a great day.